Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony for Anthony's Customs, and for this video we are going to be looking at the top 10 disappointing figures of 2015. Now, unfortunately for this video, I don't still have most of the figures that are going to be in the list, so I'm just going to be talking to you about the figures, and I might post like an image here or over here. I don't know, we'll see. You don't really need to see it because you're going to be familiar with these figures. They're all pretty well-known figures, and they're lousy, so you don't really want to look them up because you don't really want to buy them if you're not already familiar with them. So anyway, let's get in. Well, let me preface this. There are lots of really lousy figures, but when we make a list like this, and by we, I mean me, when I make a list like this, it mostly has to do with the price point and the value of the figure at that price point. Now, some figures are going to have a lower price point, and they were still really lousy, so that's why they're on the list. Or some figures might have a really high price point, whereby they would have higher standards. And if they don't meet those standards, that's why they might make this list. And then some are just going to not live up to the hype. You know, if we see a figure that we think is going to be great, and then it comes out and it's kind of disappointing after all, that's why it might make the list. So, without further ado, let's look at the list. Coming in at number 10, and we're going to go up to the worst, most disappointing figure at number 1. Number 10, not so bad, but worth talking about. So, number 10, I think we should mention the Icon's Batman figure. Now, the reason this figure is on the list, it's not inherently a horrible figure, but there is so much that's just not where it should be on that figure that it's very disappointing. It's loaded with articulation. That was like the big thing they were touting, but none of it really works. And then on top of that, we have issues with proportions, we have issues with the sculpt, we have issues with the head popping off. It's just didn't live up to the hype in any way at all. So that's the number 10 figure. The number 9 figure is the DC Collectibles Batman the Animated Series Batmobile. Now, I know many of you really liked this, but it still had a lot of problems. And here's the thing, it cost $100, and it really had nothing to offer. Yes, it had rubber tires. That's kind of cool. Other than that, there wasn't much that was well done about it. The plastic itself, completely simple design, which is not the fault of the figure, but they didn't execute it very well at all. It had all kinds of striations and marks on it, which takes away completely from the look. And then on top of that, what sculpted parts it had, like the manifolds for the exhaust, it was a really soft sculpt. And for the cockpit to open up, it had that giant groove down the hood, which is just, in my opinion, completely unexcusable. For something that's such a sleek, simple design, to add a giant hole in the hood just really doesn't work out. And then finally, the lights, they weren't very well done. You could even see the light modules inside the lights, so it didn't look very good, so that's why it made this list. Coming in at number 8, we have the SH Figuarts Darth Vader. Now, this is one of those figures where it's generally not too bad. I mean, compared to other figures, it's not so bad at all. But considering the fact that it's Darth Vader and they should have been able to just really knock it out of the park, they made some really horrible decisions. Set aside the fact that there were issues with the helmet's proportions and just the general look of the figure, the thing that really threw me off is that they didn't put the unhelmeted head in the figure, in the package. It was a separate piece that came with Luke, which, that's really not cool, SH Figuarts. We don't want to have to buy another figure. Now, it's different when Krillin had a bonus head, because he still had a whole bunch. Vader came with almost nothing, alright? And then they still didn't give us that head, so that was really disappointing. And then things like the clasp for the cape that just looked horrible right on the front of the figure. Posability wasn't very good, quality control wasn't very good. It's just a very disappointing figure. So much so that I didn't end up even keeping it. It bugs me that I don't have a Darth Vader figure to this day other than the Star Wars Black Series, which I think for the money, at least at the time, was a much better figure. So that's why it made the list. Coming in at number 7, we have the Marvel Legends Ultron Build-A-Figure, which I thought was just one giant turd. There was nothing good about it at all. Yes, you maybe could save the figure by putting a new paint job on it, but they didn't, and the sculpt was still pretty horrible. There's really not much else I need to say other than it was a really horrible figure. Coming in at number 6, we have the Age of Ultron Hulk figure, which was mostly a remold of the Hulk figure that we got for the first movie. This one had some new parts. It had a really nice head sculpt, but every single thing on that figure other than the head sculpt was horrible. It had that really sloppy sculpt for the torso, completely different color plastic for the chest and the arms and legs, and then the newly sculpted legs had that really horrible joint design for the hips. The feet still couldn't be posed, the arms were still super scrunchy, just a really lousy figure in general. Coming in at number 5, we have the PlayArts Guy Arkham Knight Robin figure. This figure was nowhere near accurate to the game. It did technically have some decent parts about it, but for the most part, it was really horrible. The paint was all over the place. They didn't paint part of the neck. They screwed up the paint on the face completely. The hair was not painted well. The sculpt was not handled well. Basically, every part of the figure was pretty darn bad. Coming in at number 4, we have the Marvel Legends SDCC exclusive 3-pack for AntMan. So we had those 3 different figures that were just completely lousy. Every single part about them was bad. They didn't have any new parts except for maybe heads. I think even one of them didn't have a new head, if I remember correctly. I don't know for sure about that, but every part of them was painted horribly. The molds were not very good. It was just a really huge waste of money if you bought that. It's one of the most disappointing things I've purchased in a long time. Luckily, the price wasn't super high for getting a 3-pack of figures, so that softened the blow just a little bit. Coming in at number 3, we have the PlayArts Guy Arkham Knight Batman. There was nothing good about this Batman figure at all. It wasn't accurate to the game, it had poorly executed articulation, it was just horribly sculpted. Not only was it inaccurate, but it didn't look like any human being, really. If you look at the face, I guess maybe if you took like an old guy that had really gaunt jowls, it might kind of look like him, but aside from just being inaccurate, it just looked really bad. The proportions were horrible. Just basically everything about this figure made it really bad. Coming in at number 2, we have the PlayArts Guy Venom Snake figure. That figure had so many flaws in it that I didn't keep it, and I really wanted a PlayArts Guy Snake figure. I might go back to the really old one that they came out with a long time ago. But this figure, man, it was just so bad. The gaps in the chest were big enough for me to fit my hand in. It just super poorly executed. Couldn't hold the guns. That's what Snake does, is he uses guns, and he couldn't even hold the guns. So definitely disappointing. And then the number 1 bad figure, disappointing figure for 2015. Hopefully you guys can take a guess. You might know if you saw my review for it. Is the 3A Master Chief. There was nothing good about this hugely expensive figure at all. Nothing. It cost way more than it should have. It couldn't hold its own accessories. It had magnets on the back that couldn't hold the guns that were meant to be connected by magnets to him. The fingers couldn't fit in the gun triggers. You couldn't pose the arms. You couldn't pose the legs. You couldn't pose the torso. The entire undersuit was rubber and fell apart as soon as you tried to move it. The armor didn't fit onto the figure properly. The lights didn't light up properly. You could see through parts of the helmet. It was really just 100% lousy. And on top of that, it couldn't even stand up on its own. So that's why it makes the number 1 bad figure, or disappointing figure, for 2015. Now I'm sure I have probably offended some of you, and maybe some of you might disagree with me, so I would love to hear which figures you think are the worst figures for the year. Most disappointing perhaps, or just bad in general, or just which ones you didn't like. So if you would like to put your list in the comment section below, please do so and we can talk about those. And I don't know, I wasn't originally going to do this list, but a lot of you asked for it, so I figured what the heck. Let's offend some people and make up a list of the lousy figures for the year. So hopefully those of you that asked for it enjoyed it, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll do one next year, maybe I won't. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.